once said that we live two lives, that the second life begins when we realize that we only have one. I believe this to be true, because last summer, my second life began. It began when my cousin passed away, unexpectedly. Without getting into details, she was only 19 years old when she passed. That is young. That is not just death, but that is tragedy. It is the tragedy that sent me into this never-ending spiral of epiphanies. The central one being the inevitability of endings. I'm younger than my cousin, and I can't remember a time where she wasn't a role model for me. Whether it be the toys I played with, the books I read, or the songs I listened to, I always wanted her approval. She was it. So when my second life began, I struggled to understand how a life with a future so bright and a present so exciting could meet its ending so soon. It cast a shadow over everything. I felt like a cartoon character walking around with a perpetual storm cloud above my head. I wanted to delete the cloud. I wanted to delete the grief. So I went looking for a manual. And I thought I would find my answer quickly. On the surface, I found the 5 stages framework. For those of you who aren't familiar, it basically breaks down this really complex, life-changing emotional experience into 5 simple stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. First, you don't accept that something's happened. Then you're really mad. Then you bargain. What if I had done this? If only this had happened. Then you're really tired, really sad, and you feel incredibly guilty. But don't worry, because when that's over, boom, it's done. Your life moves on. Isn't that so simple? Look, these stages, they lay out a rational path of what's ahead. They tell us what to expect. But they treat grief like a linear medical condition, something to get over, to recover from. They tell us what we feel, without telling us why. And that was my problem. I needed to know why. So I became incredibly frustrated, because the only answer that this framework provided me was time. And I hated that, because that answer told me that I had to sit with my pain. And like most people, I didn't, and I don't, like to be uncomfortable. So beneath the surface, grief is about disruption. It's not a medical problem to solve. It's about a disorder of control. So what happens, in my mind, when you can't find a cure to something? Well, maybe you can figure out how to avoid it instead. Seek a preventative measure. I asked myself what I thought was a mature question. How can I make sure that I never, ever, ever, ever feel like this again? Where is this coming from? What is the source? So I can identify it, pick it up, and throw it out the window. I unintentionally stumbled across this quote on social media. It describes humans as mosaics of all the people they've met and the things that they have carried. When I dug into the philosophy of this, I found that this is what is referred to as our practical identity. The sum under which we value ourselves, find our lives worth living, and our actions worth undertaking. Our relationships are woven into who we are. Our life is directly influenced by the lives of others, and we feel the absence of someone in our souls. Philosopher Michael Colby argues that we don't grieve randomly, that we grieve for the people in whom we have invested our practical identity. The people who are assumed in our daily habits, our present choices, and our hopes for the future. Those who are part of our mosaic. His hypothesis is simple. The larger the piece, the greater the agony when it is gone. I remember my last Christmas with my cousin. There's 5 of us, and we went out to lunch without our parents for the first time. And I remember looking around the table, excitedly anticipating what the future had in store for us. I wondered if cousin's lunch would become a tradition. Her absence means that this future no longer exists. Our parents have this tradition of lying the 5 of us down on the floor in the shape of a star, taking a bird's eye photograph from above. We're not going to be adjusting that picture to suddenly make a diamond, because stars and diamonds are not the same. There's a bright point missing. You see, death involves more than the physical absence of someone we love. It involves the amputation of the building blocks of our identities, the forced rearrangement of our geometry. So I figured out how to avoid the pain. All of the grief you feel is a reflection of all of the love you felt. So, to avoid grief, you avoid love. And according to the Stoics, yes, wise people don't invest in the things that they could risk grieving. But standing there, looking at my mosaic, standing in my pain, I realized that I disagree. I would argue that truly wise people invest precisely in the things that are worth grieving. Because if you don't invest in the things that are worth grieving, then what value do the things that you are investing in actually hold? Answering that question sparked a new epiphany, a new cloud, but it was less heavy. It's what the Romans called memento mori. Remember that you must die. Not as this pessimistic existential threat, but as a mantra encouraging the pursuit of a life well lived. If you live your life remembering that you must die, remembering that time is finite, that what you leave behind, that those pieces will contribute to the mosaics of the people you love, then how would you choose to build it? Looking at my cousin's life, I think she'd be very proud of what she built. My mother said it best. She did absolutely nothing halfway. Not only did she meet a lot of people, but she talked to them, she got to know them. She made them feel like her friends. Not only did she read books, but she tried out all the genres. She wrote very honest reviews. She was special. At her funeral, a room intended for 800 people overflowed with more than 1,000. At that funeral, that room was filled with heartbreak. We all watched a photo stream of her as a toddler, a teenager, a college student, with friends, with family, at school, at work. But the one consistent thing was the bright smile on her face. So that room was filled with heartbreak, but it was also filled with the gifted pieces of her mosaic. And everyone in attendance who came to mourn her left with more pieces to make part of their own. Endings only exist because beginnings do. So if endings surround us, then beginnings do too. Instead of seeking grief repellent, face it for exactly what it is. It is the reflection of love. It's the presence of absence, and it is the cost of being human. When someone dies, when something changes, your mosaic isn't broken, it is different. It is not a piece removed, it is a piece altered permanently. And that's the whole point. You don't get to decide how each piece is arranged or how long it is arranged that way. So stop trying to control the pieces. Just live loudly and enjoy the whole. Thank you.